90% of Saskatchewan respondents favored a referendum. 86% said Alberta should take further steps towards full sovereignty. And here's the shocker.
Premiers like Daniel Smith and Scott Moe aren't just criticizing Ottawa, they're openly defying it, talking about referendums.
Alberta and Saskatchewan just dropped a shocking bombshell about their exit from Canada. This time it's not premiers playing politics, it's the people themselves saying they've had enough of Ottawa's suffocating grip. The rebellion is no longer whispered. It's loud, real, and officially underway.
Just sick, tired. Nothing's going to change unless we change it.
Alberta and Saskatchewan have openly declared their intentions to pursue separation, and it's sending shockwaves everywhere except the prairies, because the prairies have been saying this for years.
Well, I guess I'm just tired of the West being screwed by the East. My whole life, that's what's happened.
The rest of Canada is pretending to be shocked like it came out of nowhere. But let's not kid ourselves. These provinces have been pushed around for so long, they have finally hit their breaking point. And why wouldn't they? After more than a decade of Liberal rule, first with Trudeau and now Mark Carney, Western voices are still completely drowned out. It's like screaming into a void. But the void is Ottawa. And it just echoes back with another lecture about climate change.
What's brought you to the event tonight?
I'm tired of what's happening in Ottawa, tired of being shut out by these people that think that the only ones that deserve anything is the people in central Canada. And we've been burned for many, many years here out in the West.
Now the numbers are where it really gets interesting. Polls are showing that 58% of Albertans actually see independence as a real possibility. Not just some Twitter rant, not just a bunch of guys in cowboy hats ranting at a rally, but an actual political option that people are taking seriously. That's more than half the province ready to say, let's walk away from Canada. And if that doesn't make Ottawa choke on its double-double, I don't know what will. Over in Saskatchewan, it's 34% of people overall who want out. But here's the kicker. When you look at younger voters, it jumps to 42%.
Analysts agree that if Alberta goes, Sask will shortly follow, and then Manitoba, and then possibly BC. BC would be completely alienated geographically from Ottawa.
Almost half of the next generation is already saying, yeah, we're not interested in playing this losing game anymore. That's a generational warning sign right there, and ignoring it would be the dumbest move Ottawa could make. And the cherry on top? Alberta already has the date set for 2026 when they'll vote on whether to become a sovereign country. The question is as clear as it gets. Should Alberta cease being a province of Canada? No vague wording, no fancy jargon, just straight up divorce papers waiting to be signed.
On one side, you've got Albertans fed up with Ottawa's attacks on our energy industry, our farmers, and our provincial autonomy.
So let's back up and ask, why are Alberta and Saskatchewan even in this position? It's called Western alienation, and it's been going on forever. Ottawa loves to drop its so-called national policies that just so happen to strangle the prairies every single time. Carbon taxes, climate policies, bans on tankers, production caps on the oil sands. All designed to look good to voters in Ontario and Quebec, but brutal for Alberta and Saskatchewan, where oil and gas aren't just industries, they're the entire economy. You can't keep telling provinces built on oil that their future is solar panels and gender-based project reviews and then act surprised when they want out.
I like the word independence, and Quebec has been doing it quite successfully for many years, so why can't we have that same conversation that they've been doing there too?
And let's talk about money, because of course, it always comes down to money. Alberta alone sends about $20 billion more to Ottawa every single year than it ever gets back. Imagine that, $20 billion gone, flushed into a system that never gives anything back. It's like being the roommate who pays all the rent and utilities while the others eat your groceries and then complain that you didn't clean the sink. Together, Alberta and Saskatchewan pump out 14% of Canada's GDP while only being 11% of the population. So basically, they're carrying the country on their backs. And what do they get in return? More regulations, more taxes, and a lecture from Ottawa about how they should be grateful.
The Western provinces have been overlooked and ignored and not treated fairly, not treated with respect, and I think they're done. And I would agree with that. Even someone coming from the East now settled and living in the West. I've been here since '09 in Saskatchewan. And I think...
And this frustration isn't just new. No, this goes all the way back to the National Energy Program in the 1980s. You know, the program that basically tried to hijack Alberta's oil and treat the province like Ottawa's personal ATM. Decades later, the resentment hasn't faded, it's actually hardened. Ask any Albertan over 40 about the NEP and just watch their eyes light up with rage. And culturally, it's not just about money and oil. People in the prairies genuinely feel disconnected from Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal. Different values, different priorities, and yet the people in power keep governing like the prairies don't exist.
Ontario's been doing that. Ottawa's been doing that to Alberta for generations. And it's been rewarded election after election by voters in Ontario and Quebec.
Now here's where it gets really spicy. Alberta isn't just talking anymore. They've set up the legal machinery to make this separation thing happen. On May 15th, 2025, they passed Bill 54, and this law basically blew up all the barriers that used to make referendums impossible. Before this, trying to organize a referendum was like running through a maze blindfolded with Ottawa moving the walls every 5 seconds. Now, it's straightforward. All it takes is 177,000 signatures, just 10% of the voter turnout from the last election. That's it. And they've got 120 days, 4 months to collect them. Honestly, that's barely a summer barbecue season, and yet it's enough to throw the question of independence onto the ballot. That's how serious this has gotten.
87% of respondents said they would vote for independence if a referendum were held tomorrow.
Meanwhile, Saskatchewan isn't sitting on the sidelines either. Back in 2022, they passed the Saskatchewan First Act, which on paper was about asserting control over their natural resources. But let's not sugarcoat it, that was a sovereignty move. It was their way of saying, we'll handle our own business. Thanks. It was the test balloon, and now the balloon has turned into a whole parade. Premier Danielle Smith has already said Bill 54 isn't a gimmick, it's responding to real demand. And if Alberta votes yes in 2026, Saskatchewan is expected to follow almost immediately. And here's where it gets really wild. Manitoba and even parts of BC might decide to jump on the train too. Imagine the domino effect. Ottawa keeps thinking it can bully these provinces into compliance, but all it's doing is lining up its own breakup.
If the Western Standard has its fingers accurately on the pulse of independence sentiments among Albertans and the Western provinces, gang, Canada's going to split apart in mere months from now.
Now add in what Alberta and Saskatchewan actually bring to the table. Alberta's oil and gas, Saskatchewan's wheat, potash, uranium, these aren't just products. These are the backbone of Canada's trade balance. You yank that out of the system and suddenly the country's exports are gutted. And it doesn't stop there, because the manufacturing sectors in Ontario and Quebec that produce machinery and parts for the energy industry, yeah, those guys would feel the ripple effects immediately. Factories that depend on Alberta's oil production suddenly find their markets shrinking, and you can almost hear the layoffs being typed up.
There is a genuine hatred against Alberta in parts of Ontario and Quebec.
Meanwhile, Alberta and Saskatchewan wouldn't exactly be sitting around crying about it. Without Ottawa blocking every pipeline and taxing them to death, the West could finally cut direct trade deals with US states like Texas and Montana. Think about that. No more begging for federal approvals, no more red tape from people who couldn't find Fort McMurray on a map.
Stopping a pipeline is worse than a tariff.
Just straight pipelines, oil, wheat, uranium, flowing south to markets that actually want them. Ottawa loses its energy powerhouse, and the West gains real freedom to negotiate like a sovereign country. And people are even talking about a Western Economic Compact, where Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba basically join forces. That means bypassing Ottawa entirely, pooling their resources, controlling pipelines, exports, investment, everything. In other words, the prairies stop being Canada's piggy bank and start being their own economic club, and Ottawa doesn't even get an invite.
But Alberta and Saskatchewan, they are not the deciders in Canada, are they? They're just the people who keep paying the bills for the rest of the country, equalization and all that.
Now, if you thought this was just about Alberta, think again, because separatist sentiment is rising everywhere. In Alberta, support for independence used to sit around 38% before the last election. Fast forward, and now it's up to 47 to 49%. That's practically half the province leaning towards separation, and the other half, Well, 70% of Albertans say they at least understand why separation is on the table. Even if they don't fully support it, they get it, and that's almost worse for Ottawa, because when people sympathize with separatists, it stops being fringe and starts being mainstream.
What's really at the heart of this dissatisfaction with Ottawa and the Confederation is the sense that Albertans and the West as a whole have that they are constantly taken advantage of by the East.
National media is no better. CBC and the Toronto pundit class love to brand separatists as fringe extremists while constantly undermining leaders like Danielle Smith. She was the only female premier in the entire country for years, and normally the media would be all over that representation win, but apparently she's the wrong kind of woman. Too Albertan, too outspoken, so instead they attack her daily. And then you've got the Ottawa power players pulling the strings. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister who comes across more like a disconnected hedge fund manager than a leader.
I think he is the same as Trudeau, where the promises will be made and all the promises will be broken.
Stephen Guilbeault, the Environment Minister who treats Alberta and Saskatchewan like his personal punching bag, pouring gasoline on Western frustration with every new policy. And of course, Gerald Butts, the strategist who's been shaping federal policies against resource industries for years and still lurking in the background.
He's going to be able to stop himself from pushing his ideas, and his idea like net zero, destroying our oil and gas industry. I don't think he's going to be able to stop himself. He was the main guy pushing ESG, pushing the World Economic. He wasn't just a member of the World Economic Forum.
Even Indigenous leaders are stepping in, not because they love Ottawa, but because they fear instability. They know when a federation cracks apart, it's the communities in the middle who pay the highest price. But Ottawa doesn't listen to that either. Polls show 62% of Canadians oppose Alberta leaving, but let's break that down. The opposition is concentrated almost entirely in Ontario and Quebec, the same regions that have dominated federal outcomes forever ever. Out west, people are looking at this setup and asking, so we bankroll the country, but our votes are worthless. And honestly, that's the question hanging over everything now. Is Canada heading straight toward its first real breakup in modern history? With 2026 right around the corner, that answer may no longer be theoretical.